Today on the podcast, I've got fellow mompreneur Tamara Day with me. We're going to be talking about the journey of being a stay-at-home mom to going to running multiple businesses.
It's a crazy ride, and I'm excited to share every bit of it. It's been ups and downs, highs and lows, but at the end, it's really good.
Welcome to the podcast with Kylie Nichols. I made the unlikely transition from stay-at-home mom to CEO of a multi-million-dollar leading fashion brand. At Nickel & Suede, we empower the everyday woman to step into her story more boldly, one life-changing accessory at a time. The goal of this podcast is to inspire you through both my story and the stories of other powerhouse women to take that first step towards living the best version of your life. So grab a notebook, grab a pen, and get ready to get started with Kylie Nichols. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. It's Friday and you are with Kylie Nichols. Today I have an extra special guest. I have Tamara Day from HGTV's Bargain Mansions. She also has a retail store. She's also a mom. Welcome.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Yes, I have a lot of titles.
I can relate. I get it.
Yes, running your own business is a whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Especially while being a mom and growing a business, and you have so many different arms of your business. So
Right. Well, similar to you, you've got a lot of different pieces to the puzzle, right? And it's just growing exponentially.
We're all trying, right?
One foot in front of the other.
That's how it goes. I think that's probably what it'll come down to today as we talk about, I wanted to have Tamara on today to say, how did you do it? Like, how are you? Like, you're on TV and you have a retail store and you're a mom. And I know for my story, like, I'm always like, how did I get here? And people ask me the same question. So I think the listeners hearing your story and just kind of how you got here and struggles and all the wins, like it'll just be so inspirational.
Oh, goodness. There's lots of struggles, lots of wins. It's just a combination of it all, right? Like the struggles lead to the wins.
Yeah, there you go. I love that. Okay, so I'll let you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of the background and we'll dig into your story too.
So, Tamara Day, and I was, just a stay-at-home mom. And I guess I shouldn't say just. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I loved it. It was really some of the best years of my life when the boys were little. I have 4 kids, 17, 15, 13, and then our big surprise, Eleanor, at the end is 8.
Okay.
So we really, had a solid decade of me staying home and just being with the kids. And that was really when my business started taking off, is we were doing the driveway days kind of thing with our house. We'd renovated the whole thing during 2008 and the economic crash. And it really spurred me to start being more creative. Like I couldn't just go up to Nell Hills and buy all new furniture, right? I really wanted to, but that was not in the cards. So I had to go figure it out and how to make it look great on a budget. And so it was the estate sales and painting furniture in the driveway while the kids were riding their bikes. And it was just such a fun time in our lives that I look back on. And if you'd have told me back then, I'd be sitting right here talking about where I'm at now. Yeah. I wouldn't have even been able to get to the path.
Yeah. Well, and I can totally relate to that because I was a stay-at-home mom and really needed to, and being creative and doing DIYs really led me to where I am too. So it sounds like you had that creative streak, and were you always doing crafty things on the side, or was decorating your passion? What was your, sanity with little kids?
I was always crafty, actually, like early years after college, but before kids, I actually made jewelry too.
Okay.
I never talk about that. So different kind of thing, but I have always done something crafty. Okay. But always loved design. Like in hindsight, I wish I'd have gotten a design degree. I've got a communications degree, so I use it every day. Yeah. But at the same time, a design degree in hindsight would have been really great. Yeah.
I've got some of the same look backs myself.
Right. But. So I feel like, what my degree serves me well, but I should have been able to see that this would have been a career path back then. I was moving apartments every, 6 months to a year and redecorating each one and painting walls and then repainting them to move out, and just always thrifting and finding a way to make it look good on a budget.
Yeah. So you always had that thread in your life going, and
I just didn't realize it was a career. Yeah. Right? Like that, who knew that was something you could do? I think that's one of the beauties of social media now is that my kids get an opportunity to like find what they're loving, and they look on social media. I think social media gets a bad rap in a lot of ways, but there's also a lot of great things that come from it. And I think finding what you're passionate about. If I look at one of my boys' thing, he's going to have all basketball. He's going to have, shoes and those basics. Another kid's going to have vans that have been converted to travel vans. And, each of them is going to have something different that they're fascinated by. And I think that really helps them see what they're passionate about and what they really love at such a much younger age than I ever could have seen, because I didn't even know that there was a job as a designer.
Yeah. I definitely would not have thought that this job is, all of my passions would have led to this job. But I think a lot of women find themselves in that spot where they like things, or they find themselves drawn to something, and they're like, but what do I even do with that? Or how do I make it into a job? And I know there's lots of coaches that are awesome at helping women do that. But I think it's so fascinating that you figured it out on your own. Like, it did turn into a job almost by luck, and same for me. So what did that look like for you? How did it actually turn into a career?
Well, my husband likes to say it's better to be lucky than good, but I like to say it's better to be prepared for the luck. Because when the luck strikes, if you don't know how to make that into something else, or really take that opportunity and grow it, it's not going to be luck. It's just going to be a past opportunity. And I think for me, I had spent so many years obsessively reading every magazine that comes out, right? Every shelter magazine, Veranda and Architectural Digest and Good Housekeeping, like every single one I subscribed to. And I read every single article and every single page just because I loved it. And so when we went to renovate our house, and I started doing the work myself, it was kind of the compilation of growing up on a farm and just that do-it-yourself mentality. And then the years, what college kid subscribes to Martha Stewart, right? But I did. I still have them all. I loved it. And so I think those times that I was all that time I was investing into reading and learning really became valuable when I did design my own house. And then when people started to see it and want me to help them, it just kind of grew. And at first I was like, well, I don't know how much you pay me. My babysitter's 15. How about 20? I don't know.
That's how it starts.
Like I $5 extra sounds good, whatever. And it just kind of grew from there. I was like, well, wait, now I have to have cuter clothes to work. I need maybe 30. And until it really, I learned so much working with good clients and bad clients. And I probably learned more from the bad clients than the good. And they push. I have one in particular that I remember that I could have done a better job in organization of certain things. She pushed back on certain things, and it pushed me into getting a real license and moving it into an actual business instead of just a in my living room kind of business.
Yeah. So it sounds very step by step. Like you just took the first job that came your way, and then the next one, and kind of word of mouth.
Exactly.
Doing it out of your house.
Yeah. We started with, so when we did our house in 2008 and I had to get the furniture, I started going to estate sales and painting and refinishing in the driveway. And then friends started wanting to buy it. And then I was like, well, okay. And this was before First Fridays downtown. Like that didn't exist back then. And so I started just buying more and having extra in the garage. And then I started well, I could invite people over to do this as a big event. And so twice a year we would have these big events, and everything on the first floor of my house was for sale.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
A food truck, we'd have music and other mompreneurs, right? Like I'm surprised our paths didn't cross back then, because you would have been the perfect person to be selling in the dining room, and somebody else selling bags in the office, and wild tree in the kitchen, and all those kind of things. So it was that mompreneur spirit of everybody's voice getting heard and everybody putting the concept out there. And by the end of the weekend, it was all gone. So twice a year, we just kept doing that. And through that, people that I didn't know, because other mompreneurs brought them through, would see the house and they're like, oh, can you help me with my kitchen? And I'm like, okay, I could do that. Sounds fun. Yeah. Good outlet. And it just kind of grew. And so all of those experiences led up to the moment when I met my producer, Matt Antrim. And he was like, you're doing really cool stuff. And I will say, my husband and I also had a lot of properties that we had renovated, but not beautiful. They were rental properties, right? They weren't designed with finishes and all the stuff. And so I'd had a lot of the construction experience. I'd had a lot of the design experience, and combining that into the mansions that we do really was the next step.
That's so awesome. I love hearing the journey, because you can just see it kind of like just build, like you're just kind of stepping up the staircase.
Right.
So your husband, what does he do? How was he part of your...
Well, so he is a wealth advisor, and so he's in the financial industry. But then on the side, we had a lot of rental properties back then. Okay. And that was kind of the hobby project. And we always had houses that we renovated and fixed up, that we moved from house to house. But the house in '08 was our big forever home kind of project, and it was a foreclosure, and it was really bad. And it was just such a mess. And we bought it in the summer, and by fall, when AIG and Lehman's fell, his income dropped overnight.
Yeah.
And we were in the middle of that renovation.
Makes sense.
We were heavily invested in the stock market and real estate. It was a terrifying time.
Yeah, it really hit you guys hard. You were
Yes.
like, what do we do? We have to do something.
Scared to death. And we, it was at the point where this was our big forever house. We were doing great. It was like the track was in front of us.
Yeah.
The fancy appliances were ordered. The hardwoods were ordered. Like, there wasn't a way to stop the train. The house was gutted, and you got to keep going. And so it was, okay, well, I'll general it. I'll just, contractors need work right now. So I could find them on my own really easily. And not that we got the best work done, but we got it done. And I managed the budgets. I managed the contractors. I did as much of the labor myself as I could. Like, I wanted dark beams, but I couldn't afford it. So I just sanded every inch of woodwork in my house myself. And it was New Year's Eve. And I remember my back hurt so bad, and I couldn't find a chiropractor because I'd been sanding my ceiling beams for a week. And I was like, my arm doesn't move anymore. I can't do it.
Something needs to be put back into place. Oh.
Yes, I just remember how I was like, oh, I'm just in so much pain, and this is so awful. And now I look at those beams, and I just remember like how important that was to me.
Yeah.
And I made it happen.
Yeah.
Right. And I learned through the process, and I look at the hardwood floors, and I carried every one of those darn boards into that house from that semi. They pulled it up to the front door, and I was like, I'm not paying somebody to unload. I will unload myself. And I just took every single piece of hardwood I carried in, and I put them in. They were varying widths and lengths, and some of them are prettier than others. And I pulled my pretty stack to one side and really organized it. I was like, I want that board there, and I want that board there. And so my prettiest one is right in front of my sink where I stand every day.
Oh my gosh, what a labor of love. I think I'm just imagining how much of a low that time must have felt like. Like, that must have just been such a, like, what are we doing? Like, this has got to be like so hard.
Right.
And then seeing, I mean, to me, it sounds like that's really like the low that then just went up. Yeah.
It is. Without that, I would not be sitting here, I don't believe.
Yeah.
Because it really was, without 2008, the whole thing, not just the house, like without the crash and that low of the finances being terrifying, having 3 kids 4 and under, having this massive house that we're doing, and just that pressure, I would have never been able to do what I do now. Yeah. Like, I probably would have melted down season 1. First house, I'd be like, forget about it.
This is too hard.
We're not going to do this anymore. But if you can make it through 2008 with all of those constraints, I can make it through anything else.
That's awesome. I love that. I always feel like when I've been in my low points, I'm like, okay, the high must be coming. Like, this is a crappy week. Like, next week's going to be amazing, because it always like makes up. Something's always coming around the corner once you survive and make it through the opportunity.
Oh, that's so true. And I do look back on those days as, I mean, they were terrible, and I would not want to do it again. Yeah. But I appreciate the path that they put us on.
Yeah. I think I can resonate with that too. Yeah. Okay. So you have a TV show now. You met your producer. Yes. I think everybody sees somebody on TV and they're like, oh, that looks so glamorous. And like,
it's so not.
They've made it. And so like, do you feel like you've made it? Do you feel like it was just oh, look, I've arrived. Now they're going to start filming me and this is wonderful.
No, no, not at all. I'd never been on a camera other than, the handy cam when my kids were born, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the extent of it. And I remember that first day that Matt came over, and when he said, I want to make a show about you, I was like, what? Like, how much is that going to cost?
Right.
That sounds like you could be a model.
It's a paid opportunity, isn't it?
Yes. And so I was like, well, sure, we'll see. And like the minute they're going to ask me for money, I'm out. Right.
Yeah.
And so they just never asked. They asked me to buy 28 houses over the last 4 years, but they never asked for money. So, it was just one foot in front of the other. He came and showed up with the camera crew at my house one day for half a day of filming, and I remember my face was twitching. I was like so nervous, and we were just talking about my house. Like, why is this such a awful thing? And it was a mind over matter, because in general, I overcome a lot of social anxiety in my everyday life, my whole life, and I just choose to be better than that every day. Yeah. And so that was like one of those tipping points for me. I'm like, look, you can go talk to people. You can go talk to the moms at school. You can go talk to whoever, and you can talk in front of this thing. It's just a machine. Nobody cares. Yeah. And nobody's really going to see it.
Yeah. Little did you know.
And so it was just every time we did it, I got a little bit more comfortable until it really it became like looking at a computer screen. Yeah.
I love that. The repetition and the consistency, I feel like, gets you over so many of those like scary things. Right. I mean, we were just talking about the podcast today, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I am way better at speaking. Like, I've practiced. I can answer a question on the fly. I can talk to a camera so much better now. So as miserable as it was to be like, I don't even want to go back and listen to whatever I did at the beginning. It's like, I'm so glad now.
Oh, I never listen. I mean, we were talking about the creative mornings thing. That was one of my first times I'd spoken in front of that large of a crowd. And I remember how incredibly stressed I was. Yeah. And yet, I never watched that. Yeah. But now, like, I would probably not even prepare. I'd just show up and do it. That's right. Awesome. Like, it'd just be an easy thing to do for me now. Yeah. But it is just practice and trial and error and goofing up and crying on stage with creative mornings. But
I know. Well, and Tamara and I are both speaking at an event next weekend. Right. And it's like the same thing. In some ways, it doesn't feel that bad because I've done these things before, but it's like, I only am that way because I've had to go through so many anxiety, stress-filled, oh my gosh, what am I going to say moments. Mm-hmm, exactly. So I think that's the coolest lesson, and the thing I always am like trying to tell people, I'm like, it literally just starts from like doing one thing. You're always scared of it the first time. You get better at it. Like, it doesn't, you don't start out brave and knowing how to do everything.
No, not even kind of. I still don't know how to do everything.
Yeah, that's so true. Right. Okay, so you, your dad came into the picture too. You do this with your dad.
I do.
How is that working with family? I mean, I work with my spouse, and working with your dad, I can imagine has
ups and downs, right? It's really fun. Mostly, he's so funny, and he's fun to have around. And I'm not that funny, right? He's the funny one. I'm like the serious one. Like, no, we got to do this right. Yeah. And so he helps lighten the load in that way for me a lot.
That's awesome. That's so great. Okay, well, there's so many ways we could go with this now. I'm like, all the things you've learned during this, like you also do have a retail store now. How did that happen? Just for history.
Well, so I've always dreamed of having a retail store. I loved the idea of that. And if you would have asked me a decade ago what I'd be doing now, I would have probably said a retail store. Okay. I might not have said a brand new retail store during COVID.
Me neither. I think I wouldn't say that either.
I would probably not choose that again. Yeah. But at the same time, it gave us the opportunity, again, a low of COVID. We opened our store in December and closed in March. But it gave us this great opportunity to boost our online opportunities. It gave us a new focus, and it really helped us shape the direction we wanted everything to go. We had 3 months of learning, and then we got to shut down and perfect it. That's great. So it really, in the moment, was terrifying, but turned out really well at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so cool that you can sell the things that you use to decorate. I mean, it's just a full circle thing. It's so smart.
Well, it's really back to my roots of like where everything started. It was really just a big retail pop-up.
Selling what you like and what you love and have either designed or created somehow.
Exactly. Out of my own house that I'd renovated. And then after season 1, we did the same concept at one of the houses. And we did it season 1 and 2, where we just, the house was sold and everything in it was for sale. And we brought all the extra stuff from every house. And it was just so fun. I kind of miss those days and would love to do that again. It's just a little harder now.
Yeah, I know. But the community and the meeting people, I mean, I think meeting people I've found is invaluable. You know, you said you met all the opportunities that have come your way have probably come from meeting people through each of these experiences.
Exactly.
Okay, so you start designing homes. You're still a mom. We talked about working full-time versus being at home. When did you, how did that transition go? Because I know following your passion can sometimes take you away from the home, which was really hard for me. Sometimes you can do it at home. Anyways.
Right. You know, it was so hard. Like for the first several years, I mean, probably 10 years, it was staying home and really just working around their nap schedules and staying up late and getting up early and, you know, that kind of just figure it out sort of thing. And figuring out where to source things was such a huge thing. Like I couldn't just source everything vintage. Yeah. You got to have a couch in the room too, right? Or whatever it might be, or finding somebody to reupholster something. I don't know how to, I stapled my thumb trying to figure that out. I'm not doing that anymore. So it was just figuring it out while they're right beside me and taking opportunities of 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, until at one point we needed a babysitter and the babysitter needed to turn into a nanny. And it just became a whole lot more, a lot faster than I expected.
Yeah, I identify with that. But I do love that, there's so much progress you can make with those little steps. People ask me, how do you do it all with 5 kids? And it's like, well, it was all a phase. It was all transition. And we were able to do it this way here. And then the phase needed to change. And the family can do that.
Yes, that's exactly right.
But now you have a lot of hats that you wear. You don't just decorate homes or you're not just on TV, which is a lot. But what else are you doing? And how do you manage it all? Or how do you say, oh yeah, we can go do that too, or we can go do that too? Or,
it really boils down to having good people around me and that it's not just me at this point. That I think was when, hiring the first nanny and then knowing that the kids were good while I was gone. And then when it became too much, hiring a good accountant, which that was a very hard process. And knowing the hats that I wear well and finding the right people to wear the other ones. And there's only one me. And so I need to focus on the things that I do the best. And that's the design, that's the TV, that's the heart of what I do, right? And so focusing there and letting other people run the ship of the bookkeeping and the buying and, I'm there picking all the stuff out, but I'm not the one taking the invoices in anymore and making sure the numbers are right. And I've got a team of designers because I can't help every customer that comes in the door and I can't help everybody that has a house they want me to design, but I have great designers that work for me, that have worked for me for a long time and really know me and my vision and my style. And I trust that they implement it in a way that the customer is going to love. And so it really boils down to having the right people around you that make it happen.
Yeah. How has that transition and that growth been for you? I mean, being in charge of people for me has been a whole new thing.
One of the hardest parts.
Because I love the creative and it sounds like you do too, but it's like the newness doesn't ever stop because as soon as you figure out how to source, then suddenly now you have to figure out how to get other people to source like you would do. And there's a constant churn of okay, now I don't know how to do this.
Every single day there's something I don't know how to do.
That makes it so much better.
Yes, right? It is. It's there's never a day that you don't learn something that could make it better. And my team, I know, hates it. I come in some days and I'm like, I have 300 ideas you have to listen to right now. And we're going to lay them all out, and it's a brain dump, and they get their pens out and they write them all down. And then we have figured out processes to make that go smoother. And it's that, wait, we could do this too. And wait, what's the priorities, and figuring out, and having, Livy is my CSO, and she really helps navigate those waters really well. And sometimes the flood of ideas, the brain dump that I have, turns into great stuff, and sometimes it just goes on the back shelf for some time down the road. Yeah. And it just works out.
Yeah.
But managing the people has been a struggle, and I'm thankful that Livy does most of that.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, good people. And I think that's what you don't see from the outside lots of times too, where you say, well, how is she doing that? It's like, well, she did a lot of things, and then she also figured out how to get a lot of people to help her.
Right. Well, I'd never sleep if I didn't have everybody around me.
Same.
If I didn't. And I love all the people that I work with. That's the other part, is that they're not just extra bodies doing work. Yeah. They're my friends. They're my people. And I'm thankful for all of them.
Yeah. So let's see. COVID was a big setback for all of us. Yes. Have you had any other instances of feeling like, you've hit another low that was really hard to come out of, or there's this,
Yes. I mean, the COVID was definitely...
Give me another one.
A stressful time. But I would say, the show has been exceptional. Like 90% of it is an amazing experience. Yeah. And I'm going to look back on this time and think, holy cow, this was incredible. But at some point there will be somebody younger, cuter, and more talented than me, and that's just fine. I'm going to enjoy the ride while I've got it. Yeah. And I'm going to look back on it with really great memories, and I'm going to get to watch my dad and my kids, 20 years from now. Yeah. And that's going to be something I really love. But that's not to say it hasn't been insanely stressful. Yeah. And there were a lot of times that it looks like when you watch the show, the money is pouring in, but the reality is pouring out. Somebody has to buy the houses. And when we started this, I didn't have a great team around me. I had 2 people that helped me with design. I didn't have a business model that managed doing 6 to 12 houses a year that were $3 to $1.5 million houses, right? This was a big undertaking, and sometimes it didn't work out as awesome as it might seem. Yeah. And working through that and figuring out, it's going to be okay. And we're going to, we might've lost money on this thing, but we're going to make money on this thing, and learn from each of those experiences has been, really, there have been lots of tears, but there's been lots of highs as well. Yeah.
I think that's very realistic to hear, because, you think on social media or on TV, you're like, perfect. Of course it's painted perfectly. Of course the story seems like it's going to work out every time. Like 10 people are going to want to buy this, or,
right.
This was $1 million product or whatever. But on the other side, you're like, well, that one did, not everything's a home run. It just isn't.
It's just not. But you can't say that on TV.
Right. So I think it's reassuring to peel it back a little and say every time there's something to learn.
There's something to learn. And there's times where you think, I know one house we bought, I thought was like the greatest deal we could have ever made. And I was like, oh my gosh, we bought this so right. And we had a bad contractor that did bad work and was shysty, and it didn't work out awesome. And it was a really hard lesson. Yeah. But we made it through.
So how do you keep going? What's your optimism?
Some days you just stay in bed.
Good. Everybody, that's normal, guys.
Everybody needs a day in bed every once in a while. It's the matter. It's taking that day in bed and then still getting up the next day and not just staying there. Yeah. Sometimes you've got to grieve whatever it is you're dealing with, but then the next day you got to get up and say, it's going to get better. Just like you said earlier, it's a roller coaster. Life is not going to be all highs. It's not going to be all lows. And really, it's probably not even going to be in the middle. Yeah. It's a combination of all of it. And making it through the downs so you can get to the ups is is really what you got to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's so true.
And sometimes medication helps.
There's a lot of things that can help for sure.
You can do a lot of things to make it better.
Yeah, no, I think that's the hard thing is it's like, I don't know, there's always so many hard days, and there's so many times you want to give up, and you're like, but even if I keep going, like, then is it going to happen again? And it's like, well, it's part of the story. It's part of the journey. But I think the lows prove there's going to be more highs, you know? And so
exactly.
Hang in there.
And I think there's career lows and then there's mom lows.
Yeah.
Right? Like you've got to balance both of those. Because I think back over the past 5 years, and when we're filming, I'm working, 10, 12-hour days, 4 to 6 days a week. And it's long and hard. And when you have teenage kids, they might want to get in trouble sometimes. And
yeah, I was going to ask, how do you balance the mom, and how do your kids do with all of the...
Yeah, I think it's a common question I get asked is like, how do you balance it all? And it's just not possible. Like, I'm not always going to be in balance with everything, but I can say that some days I'm really a great mom, and there are some days I am a really great retail owner. Some days I'm a really great host, and then there are other days that I'm not good at any of it, and I probably should have stayed in bed. But at the end of the day, it's taking the moments that you can maximize and doing the best that you possibly can in each of those moments, and making it the best memories. But I know the mom guilt never ends. It's endless, and it is hard. But at the end of the day, I know my kids may wish I was around more, but I also know that they can see anything is possible now. Yeah. That there is really, the sky is the limit. If we can go from hanging out and painting furniture in the driveway to international television. Yes, I love that. And multi-series and like years of this, there is no cap on what their potential is. And I think they can really see, you don't have to, it's not like we started out with billions of dollars to start this whole thing. Yeah. Start with $500 and buying stuff at a garage sale. Yeah. So I think that is going to outweigh the negative of not being there for every single moment. Yeah. I really love that. And I think that's really true. I get the same guilt I have. I I was like the only mom who didn't walk to the park the other day to meet the preschoolers, and I felt terrible, and that's fine. You can feel terrible about it. Right. But like, I think, that's part of why I wanted you on the podcast today, is like, people need to see that like anything is possible, and it doesn't take this momentous one-time effort, or it doesn't take momentous money, and it doesn't take connections, or like you can start from wherever you're at and take your thing you love and just build it. And, and you don't know where you're going to build to. No. Like, you don't have to have an end in sight. And that's also really encouraging, because sometimes that has even made me feel nervous. Like, I don't know what is the limit? Well, the sky's the limit. Okay. There is no limit. It just is what it's going to be. And next day is the next day. And who knows what it's going to be next, right? Like, I could have never guessed any of it. Yeah, being open to somebody else has better plans than me. More and bigger is awesome. Yeah, and I think that you show up. Like, you're like, I show up, and then I keep going. Yep, even when you don't want to. So important. I love that. Okay, well, with summer almost here, I'd be, terrible if I didn't ask for some kind of design tips or something. What are you excited about in your field? I know, what's fun for you right now with creative? Outdoor spaces are all the thing right now. After the past year we've had, our homes are so important. Yeah. And being outdoors and having an outdoor kitchen is like my number one tip for people is there are so many outdoor spaces that you can convert into an outdoor kitchen. Cool. We just did our whole exterior of our house this past year, and we partnered with a company called RTA and Coyote Outdoor Living and did a whole outdoor kitchen, and that hasn't been announced yet, but we will have a fun announcement with them very soon. And they have just great products that for every budget you can do an outdoor kitchen. Very cool. And so it's really like, if you're in an apartment, if you're in a big house, you can do either or and still get that outdoor entertainment opportunity. And with everything we deal with now, being able to spend as much time outside is huge. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's so much less stress than cooking inside. You just let the rain wash all the dirt away. You don't have to clean up. You don't have to wipe the counters down at the end of the night. You just throw the paper plates away and you go to bed.
That's amazing. That sounds like a dream. I love that idea.
A little less guilt right there.
Do you have a full, is it a kitchen? I mean, a sink? Is it what do you recommend?
Well, I would say, having a great grill.
Yeah.
If you're really like into cooking, there are so many fun options. We just got the big Coyote smoker. It's like the big egg thing. I haven't figured it out yet, but that is my summer goal.
I'm pretty sure you can figure it out based on everything we've talked about today.
I'm sure I can. It's just finding the time.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out like what's the first meal I'm going to make on the smoker. But,
cool.
I'd say the most fun thing that we have is the pizza oven.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something again, every budget, there is a pizza oven for every budget. And it is so engaging for the kids.
Yeah.
And so fun. And it just, sits on the counter outside and you make your pizza and you buy the dough at Trader Joe's. You don't have to go fancy and make your dough and make all the stuff. You can buy all the ingredients and just set it in bowls on your counter. And your kids are rolling out the dough. And it is like our nightly activity when we do that. It's like brings the whole family and all the teenage boys over.
That's good. Yeah, it gets everybody together. I
Yes.
think that's a great idea. We do pizza nights often on Fridays, but I feel like this is a really fun summer twist on it.
Yes, it's really great. So
Cool.
those are my fun outdoor tips.
All right,
Bring
well.
color into it too.
Yeah.
Pillows, vases. Don't leave if you're having friends over, bring some of the stuff that you have inside out.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to live outside, but bring your fun accessories outside. The other night we had Nora's softball team over and it was super windy and we made hot dogs on the grill and I could not keep paper plates on the counter. So I brought a basket that's like a really pretty black and white basket that's really probably meant to set more like on a bookshelf and be pretty. Mm-hmm. But it had a lid that was attached. And so I just put all the paper plates and forks and cups into that. So you just lifted the lid and pulled out what you needed and nothing blew away and I didn't have to deal with it all night.
That's awesome. And I bet it was cuter too.
It was way cuter.
Well, I love obviously the tips are fun, but like even in that example, like you pulled something out, you made it work. Like just that, I feel like that DIY entrepreneurial spirit, like it runs through everything, but like it really does show your kids, it shows everybody, like you can literally make anything work. You can do anything.
Yes.
You don't need the perfect setup to get started on anything.
Exactly.
Even for a party to have people over.
I read something years ago that has always stuck with me. I wish I could remember who said it, but she said that whenever she hosts a big dinner party or has people over, she is completely ready, but she doesn't put her pants on. She leaves her robe on and then greets her guests at the door and says, "Oh, go on in, pour yourself a cocktail," and lets them feel comfortable in her space while she runs up and puts her pants back on and lets them just kind of like feel casual and less like everything has to be perfect. And I'm like, that is such a great tip. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
It can be, done.
Yeah.
And that's good enough.
Yeah. Well, and that's how you build anything. That's how,
right?
That's what I believe. That's how I've started my business. That's how you started yours. And so
I like to say perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of fear in the perfect.
Right.
And so when it feels real, when it feels like you're just getting started, when you're okay with just getting it done, then that's when you can roll up your sleeves and get started because it's authentic. So cool.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for sharing some of your journey with us and your stories and for being an inspiration. Also being willing to be real about it all instead of, just continuing the perfect. So I feel like the real is so helpful. So.
Oh, well, thank you. This was really fun.
Okay. So we've heard a lot about your story, and if people want to learn more, where can they find you?
Well, you can watch Bargain Mansions on Discovery Plus.
For sure, do that.
You can also find me on Instagram at Tamara Day, Facebook at Tamara Day, and tamaraday.com, where we have our retail store, and we also have our e-design platform, and you can find us for any design project you've got, local or coast to coast.
Awesome. Well, and I was on there today. You've got the blog too, so you can see projects, and I love that you can shop by episode.
Oh, that's been
so
such a labor
cool.
of love.
Like you can shop the item she showing in that episode. It's so cool. So
yes, we've put a lot of time and effort into those episodes and making sure you can find the light that you saw or the rug that you saw. And yeah, I love that piece too.
I can really appreciate that in my world. So way to go.
Thank you.
Everybody watch your show and check out those. So go follow on social.
Awesome. Well, and you can find us on May 30th on HGTV. I do a special guest episode of Hometown Takeover with Aaron and Ben Napier, and Steve Ford.
Very cool.
Very fun.
Okay. Well, we're excited to watch where you go next. We know it's going to be amazing places. So
lots of fun stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for being on today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening today to With Kylie Nichols. I hope that today you felt empowered to take one more step towards living the best version of you. Tune in next week for another episode, and in the meantime, you can find us elsewhere on the internet. You can find me on Instagram at Kylie Nichols and at Nickel and Suede. You can also find us at nicolandsuede.com. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.
Stronger than